So we're now going to bake some lighting in order to make this scene look a little bit more effective. So in our scene view, I just basically want to add some lights. So game object, light and a point light. Okay, I'm just going to get into a position where I think I want this point light. Let's say somewhere like here. As long as I've got my point light selected, game object and align with view, and then it puts it into that same position. Just switch on your gizmos if you need to see that. Okay, so I'm going to make the range of this about 45. In fact, that might be a bit too much, about 35, so you can see how far that light is actually extending. And then I'm going to make the colour of this a relatively warm colour, so I want it to be like a pretty intense orange. I want to change its mode to baked, so that when we bake the light, it'll actually bake that colour into everything. Its intensity I'm going to set to about a 3, and its indirect multiplier I'd leave at 1. Okay, don't need any shadows, I'm fine. Now you're not going to see the light show up at the moment because all of these textures that we're using are unlit textures, so they're not affected by lights. So I'm just going to take this other point light, Control and D, and let's move it over to the other side. And this one I might have as a sort of a bluish light, so I'm just going to change this to a blue. Bear in mind that these two colours sit at opposite sides to each other on a colour wheel, so I'm using a little bit of colour theory there in order to kind of warm everything up. These are supposed to be complementary colours to each other so that they work in tandem and they're quite useful together. I'm going to make the intensity of this one about a 4.5 and its range to about 65, so it's pretty big. Okay, once again, no shadows, and it should be a baked light. And then I'm going to take this point light again, Control and D to duplicate. I'm just going to bring this one up into the air. Kind of have it sat over the top of everything, and I want to colour this one a red, deep kind of red colour. The intensity of this one I'm going to make about a 2.1, but the range I'm going to make about a 55. So the three colours should then work together in this scene. Now my directional light, I want to change the mode from mixed to baked. The intensity, I'm just going to raise this a little bit, about 1.3. Okay, so that it lightens everything up, because as you notice at the moment everything is really dark. The more you lighten the directional light, the more it will sort of filter out the other colours. So if you feel that the other colours are a bit too strong, just keep increasing that intensity of that directional light. Okay, now I only want the colours to affect the central objects but not this wall. I want to keep the wall at this kind of a colour. So to do that, I'm going to go to the ground and I'm going to take all of these wall elements, just going to hold shift and select them all. I'm just going to unmark them as static. So anything that is not static does not get affected by any light baking. Okay, I'll put those back later. Just for the moment I'm going to switch those off. So now we're going to actually bake the lighting. So if we go over to Window, Rendering and Lighting, and we drag our lighting tab over here. First of all, we need a light setting. I've just come into the My Scenes folder. This is where it will save our new light settings, so let's just do that. And that now gives me access to all this so that I can actually bake. Now if you find that you've got auto generate checked on and it's already baked a bunch of lights, just uncheck that and then click the drop down, choose clear baked data. You'll find out if it's baked any data, because if you come over to the baked light maps, there will probably be some textures in here. You just basically need to get rid of those by doing what I just showed you. Okay, if you've got a good graphics card, probably move over to progressive GPU, it's a lot faster. And for the purpose of testing, I'm going to lower my light map resolution down to about 1. All right, so it's really low. This will be extremely fast, but not very good quality. Max light map size, I'm gonna keep it on about 1024. That should be okay for a light map. If it was a texture, I'd lower that down to about 512. This should be fine. Okay, and then finally my light map parameters go as low as you can, default very low resolution. Okay, so now I'm simply going to click generate lighting. It will go through the scene and it will now light it, and there we go. Okay, so now it's made a bunch of changes. So in my simulator I can now see that everything's a little bit brighter. It looks a little bit nicer. Yep, okay, so I'm quite happy with that. I'm not necessarily getting that much red, so I'm just going to click on this red and move it down a bit, and I'm just going to increase that a bit to about 2.6, and I may very well actually just move this forward a bit, just over here. The orange intensity, I just want this to be a little bit more intense, so I'm going to go with about a 5. And my blue intensity is already pretty good at 4.5. Okay, so I want to once again rebake. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click where my generate lighting is, clear the bake data, and I'll show you what baked light maps look like. It just looks like this. Okay, it's just one single image, 128 pixel by 128 pixel image. So I'm going to clear the bake data. And then once again, click generate lighting. It's going to relight everything so I can see what it now looks like through my simulator. I quite like the look of that. I think the colors could be more intense. Okay, so once again, I'm going to go to my orange light here. I'm really going to push this up now, so about a 7 range, increase it to about a 45. Point light 1, which is the blue, I'm going to now go up to about a 6.5. Indirect multiplier, I'm going to increase that to a 2. And then the red light, which only looks like it's affecting this back area, I want to bring that back up here maybe. Range, let's go with about 85. And I'm going to go with about a 4 on this one. My directional light, just want to lighten everything up just a little bit more, so I'm going to go 1.4. Okay. I'm also going to switch off any shadows, so no shadows. Over to my lighting now. I'm going to clear all my bake data. Once again, just generate lighting. As you can see, everything's got a little bit lighter, and now we can really see those elements. I think they're quite nice. All right, they're coming out very illuminated. And then when we put our enemies in shortly, I think that will look quite nice. All right, so I'm happy with that. 128 pixels by 128 pixels is not that great for a bait light map. So I just want to start to increase the quality without making the image too big. So what I'm going to do is my light map resolution, I'm going to increase this to about a 4. 4 pixels will probably be good enough to actually render across this element. I'm going to change my resolution to a default low resolution. So once again, I'm going to clear the bake data. I'm going to generate. This will take a little bit longer time to do this. Only slightly longer. There we go. It's telling me a total time of 1 second. So I've now got a 512 by 512 picture of a bait light map. Not necessarily changed that much, it's mostly all white actually there. But what we can see there is that our color light map is right there and our shadow light map is right there. There's nothing in the shadow light map, which is interesting. So let me try a baked indirect. So there's no shadow map then. Let me clear the bake data, try it again, generate. You'll see the images being populated. There we go. Oh, for some reason it's still put in the shadow map. That's my image with all my colors stored there. That will then be applied over the objects, and it means that you don't have to use any direct lighting. In mobile, when you use direct lighting, for example like this, that's going to kill your frame rate. Mobiles hate real-time lights. They really do affect your frame rate. So where possible, don't use any real-time lights. If you do need to, a maximum of one. Okay, only one real-time light, otherwise it's really going to affect your performance. Okay, so I think I'm quite happy with that. My bait light map is there. It's only 512 by 512. Got no real-time lights. Everything is good. So now, if I'm happy with that, I can take my point lights and I can actually now just delete them. My directional light, no longer need to use it, so I can just switch it off. Notice it has no effect whatsoever on my scene. Since all that light has now been baked into there and it's just applied as an image overlay. The only issue is obviously it adds another draw call to my profiler. I switched my canvas off to check how many draw calls were used on my canvas. Let me just give this a quick go on my profiler. Just get it started. As you can see, the wall still looks perfectly fine, no changes there. It's only on these elements, but now it's a lot brighter. It looks nice. Just click anywhere and then I want to come down to rendering. Okay, so now I've got 18 draw calls, which is still pretty good, to be honest, but now I've got my canvas on. So for example, this item and a little bit of text and the moon and all these other items are all adding now to my draw calls, including my bait light maps. Okay, 18 draw calls is perfectly fine. All right, what we're trying to avoid is like a few thousand draw calls, and we're still batching all of our elements. Okay. I forgot to do my walls. That's why my batch draw calls are still back down at 12. Okay, so in fact, let me just double check that. So I'm just going to go to ground, just going to make sure that my walls are static once again. Probably only reduce it by one draw call or something. Just click somewhere and on my rendering. Oh, yeah, quite a lot actually. 9 draw calls. All right, excellent. Yeah, so I've halved that. That's good. So now my batch draw calls is back to 24, and that's with my canvas on there and also the bait lighting as well. All right, and I've only got 6 set pass calls, and now my scene actually looks like it's being fully lit by all sorts of lights. All right, excellent. Yep, I'm quite happy with that. So what I want to do now is effectively save my scene, and I actually want to export this out at the moment as an APK so that we can test it on mobiles. So if you have a mobile device, I basically want you to test this at the moment just to double check that you are getting a good frame rate at this point in time. At each stage that you're working through this game, I would recommend doing an export every now and then, checking it, double checking to make sure it does work on your phone and that you are getting a good frame rate. So to do this, we are going to save, and we're going to go to File and Build Settings. Now, at the moment there's absolutely no scenes in the scenes in build, which means it won't actually load anything. So we have to click Add Open Scenes, which is our main scene. It's at 0 now. So now that's all you have to do in order to get that to work. So I'm simply going to click Build. As you can see, it's going to export an APK. I'll probably create myself a new folder here called APKs or something and just give it a name. Well, it's called Halloween Shooter anyway, so Halloween Test 1, and that will then export that. Now it could take a while, but once it's exported you will then be able to load that up in your phone. So what I want you to do, if you've got an Android device, if you've got an Apple device, don't worry, we'll get onto that later. But I want you to go onto Google Play and install this APK installer. All right, it's completely free. I've been using it for a while. It seems to be perfectly fine, and it just lets you basically load in your APKs from Unity in order to play them. Now, normally, if it's not coming from a verified source like Google Play or Apple iStore, you will get these kind of messages. So, unknown source, will you allow it to actually install? What this is worried about is that it may be an APK that's from an untrusted source and it might be stealing your data and all that kind of stuff. You know this is a trusted source because you've made it yourself. All right, it's coming from Unity. So all you have to do there is either click allow, or you might have to change something like this, where install apps from external sources. It differs from phone to phone. Okay, how to actually allow your phones to actually install APKs from outside sources. Okay, but once it's on there, you should then be able to fire it up and just double check, see how many frames per second you're getting to make sure it's all working fine.